Aloha mai kaku, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Moana Nui podcast. It's great to be back. I want to thank Dana for stepping in last week. Was traveling a little bit and had some internet issues at the hotel. It wasn't that great, even though it was hotel internet. But but I'm back. And it's great to be back on the show. My name is Moana, the founder of the podcast. I'm also a children's book author for the Adventures of Nakoa and Nohea children's book series, editor and publisher for the Burning Spear Comics and Wildcard Chronicles, champion for our BIPOC community and the wonderful independent creatives that we support. And of course, a lover of our fans and listeners. So if you're here with us tonight, go ahead and share this video. You guys will definitely want to talk to our guest tonight. So, but before we go there, let me turn it over to my lovely right hand, the woman who keeps me straight, Dana.
Aloha, everyone. For those that may or may not know me, I am Dana. I am a cosplay event and con staff photographer. I'm an event planner, a voice actor, and a whole lot more. And we're so excited for our guest for tonight. So I'm going to hand it back over to Mona to do some introductions. So here's the lovely Juana. Oh, wrong way. I'm used to you being on the left.
I know. Yes. So tonight's guest is a returning interviewee, a friend and a family of the Moana Nui podcast. His name is Nuta Lilavois. And for those who are not familiar with him, he is a Haitian-American writer and publisher, born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and grew up in Brooklyn, New York City. He started reading comics when he was 11 and fell in love with the medium. He loved it so much that he started drawing his own and actually sold them to his classmates. At the same time, his love for computer programming grew and he headed down that career path as a more practical profession. But his love of writing and creating was always in the background of his life. A couple decades later, he picked up where he started and started creating comic books again. In 2017, he teamed up with artist Gian Carlo Bernal to create one of my favorite comics, the Crescent City Monsters. And as his fan base grew, he launched his first Kickstarter. And really the rest is history because they're both killing it on the platform. He's also a 2020 Glyph comic book best writer. And he continues, as I said, to raise tens of thousands of dollars on Kickstarter. He's crushing it, and he has something else coming. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do, let's bring him on.
Hey guys, what's up?
What's up?
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yes, it's good to see you again.
Yeah,
I'm glad we got to see each other at BlurredCon. That was awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, it was good. It's been like what, maybe a year and a half since we saw each other face to face.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think the last time we saw each other was at New York City in 2019, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good seeing you for the first time, Dana.
Yes, same here.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm ready. Well, thanks for having me here. I'm ready to get up close and personal.
Okay.
I decided to spice up my interviews, and add a little bit more personal anecdotes. Usually I'm a little bit more reserved, but this time I'm gonna reveal it all. So many secrets. No, I'm just kidding.
He's about to spill the tea, y'all.
Hashtag team spoiler alert.
That's right. Awesome. Well, welcome back. Thank you for coming back. So what have you been up to since the last time you were on the show?
Uh, wow, a lot. So 2020 was like a bittersweet year. There was a lot of things happening. And, unfortunately, towards the end of the year, my mother passed away, so that was really hard on me. And it was a little after Thanksgiving, and she was in the hospital during Thanksgiving, and when Christmas passed around, it was just a different feeling. So 2020 in that respect was really hard for me. And then continuing on to 2021. But like I said, it was bittersweet because at the same time, that's the year I won the 2020 Glyph Awards along with Gian Carlo Bernal. It was surprising because we had won 4 awards: best writer, best artist, fan favorite, and I believe best cover. I hope I got that right, because but yeah. So, and then at the same time, our last Kickstarter did tremendously well. It raised $31,000. So
Woo!
yeah, so there was some highs and lows for 2020, but you move on. And after being in that funk, I was really uh I don't I don't want to say depressed, but I was really down. I really couldn't focus, after the death of my mother. um and it was really hard, harder than I expected it to be. So for the first half of the year, no, I wouldn't say the first half, but the first few months, it was a struggle, just creatively getting to a place where I want to be. But I think now, I'm starting really to uh, to grab a hold of myself, the old Newton. I'm really excited about some of the ideas that I've had. You know, with the death of my mother, I realized it really, life is short, but when something like that happens, it really just grabs you hard, and you kind of reevaluate things and how you do things and what you want to do. And so one of the things I want to accomplish is to just put up more content. So you know i'm I'm going to try to just blitz Kickstarter in the next maybe 6 months. I have a few projects that I want to start. So I want to start those. I'm going to try to do at the same time. Cross your fingers. Hopefully, it's something that I could pull off with the same quality that I do Crescent City Monsters. So I just want to produce more content as much as I can when I can. Because you never know. you know. So that's one of the things. And if you follow me, you'll see that I've posted a few of the things that I plan on working. There's Keisha, the Demon Eater. Everyone seems excited about that. I was really taken aback at how much people kind of just gravitated to that. And so that's one of the things that Gian and I are going to be working on. What I plan to do is take Crescent City Monsters. Right now, we finished issue 4. We have issues 1 through 4, and then we also have the trade. What you plan to do is kind of take a step back and kind of figure out, go a little deeper into Crescent City Monsters, because I feel like I'm at the point of the arc where like there's something more that I want to say. I just can't figure it out. So I just want to take a little bit of time to flesh out the story and go really deep. So I'm going to be taking some time out to really write Crescent City Monsters, and even take it up to the next level. And in the meantime, Gian and I are going to be working on Keisha, the Demon Eater, which is within the Crescent City Monsters world. So our fans will still be able to enjoy Gene's great artwork and his love of monsters and whatnot. So don't worry about that. Even though Crescent City Monsters will be on hold for a while, you have Keisha, the Demon Eater. And there are other stories I'm working on with TJ Sterling. Well, one other story I'm working on with TJ Sterling. If you follow me again, you'll see that there's a story, a sci-fi Afro punk meets cyberpunk story that we're working on called Villainous. Really excited about that too, because it's a switch in genre. So I've been focusing on horror lately, but this here is a sci-fi story, so I'm excited about that. And then a couple of other stories, Ace Harlem, and then another story, Ogun's Warriors. So I plan on having a few things up and running soon.
Okay.
That
Now,
sounds
of course,
amazing.
Newton. And of course, as you mentioned at BlurCon, I got to finally meet you for the first time. And of course, for those that are in our audience that may not know you, tell us your Pico or your origin story. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how'd you get your start in comics?
Okay, yeah. So Mona mentioned a little bit of it, so I'll repeat a lot of it, maybe go into a little bit more detail. So like so I was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Um, Came here when I was really young. I was about 5 years old. Um, uh, was raised in Brooklyn. I was still consider myself a Brooklyn person right now. I live in the Bronx. Big up to the Bronx, the boogie down. Um, but I grew up in Brooklyn. Like my formative years was in Brooklyn. I grew up with a lot of creative kids. I was really fortunate. So like the idea of creating comic books and bringing them to class and showing them to my classmates wasn't like didn't feel like, oh, like a nerdy thing to do. It wasn't like I felt like I was gonna get ostracized for doing something like that. It was like, oh, this is something cool, because there were a lot of other kids in my class who was drawing comic books, and I wasn't the only one. And so it was that atmosphere where, as a young creative person, you can just, do whatever you wanted to express yourself. So creating comic books was a really cool thing for me because, I like Moana said in the intro, I loved comic books, and I was a real big Marvel head because a lot of my classmates they were Marvel heads too. And when I started collecting comics, there were like these other kids in class, and they happened to have older brothers, and their brothers were into collecting comics. So their brothers were like kind of influenced them. And, they were saying like, Marvel is the best comic book company, while DC was like corny. So, I kind of grew up with with that mentality for the first few years while I was collecting comic books. So I was like a real big Marvel head, and a lot of times people ask me, so what was your favorite comic book growing up at that time? I just loved it all. I mean, the Avengers, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, the X-Men, just everything. I was a real big superhero fan. I loved everything Marvel. Marvel just seemed like such the heroes just seemed to resonate and connect with me. And then I remember when Secret Wars, the first Secret Wars came out, where Spider-Man got his black suit. I was just blown away by that. Yeah, so when I fell in love with it, I was like the kind of kid, like if I really liked something and I think and I thought I could do it too, I would just do it. So, I sat down and I started drawing comic books. I remember my first comic book was called The Masked Man. I thought it was so cool. It had like a character like Cyclops, but I called him Acro Ray because he was like part acrobatic and he had like rays coming out of his eyes. So I called him Acro Ray. And then he had like two ninjas, and they were called the Masked Man. And so it was cool. And then I had a collaborator too, another classmate. Shout out to Cedric Richardson. What's up, Cedric? So yeah, we used to collaborate, and we created a comic book called The Masked Man. So Yeah, once I did that, like, you know how you're a kid and you try to when you try to replicate, you try to make it as real as possible. So, I had a cover, and on the cover had the price, right? I forgot what the price was. Maybe it was like 50 cents, or I don't know, 10 cents or whatever. And I didn't really think about it, but this kid came over and he was like, "Oh, here, here's 10 cents. I'll buy the book from you." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, sure." And so he took it home, and his mom saw like what I was doing. And so I guess she wanted to encourage me. I never met his mom, but she would give him money. And whenever I had my comic books, she would give him money to buy my comic books. And so that was like, that was in a small way somebody who you didn't know just indirectly affecting your life, because that, you know, as someone purchasing something that you bought, kind of like made it feel like whatever were creating had extra value, or value that you didn't think about at first. So that really like kind of just propelled me even more to like just want to start creating comics. So I sat down. I used to create a lot of comics, but at the same time, I was a full on, I guess you could say I was a full on nerd, because besides comics, I also liked computer programming. And, as you're growing up at that time, the path to becoming a computer programmer is more obvious, and, it makes more sense. And, I had old school Haitian parents, and, if I was like, I'm going to be a comic book writer, they'd be like, what? you know? I became a computer programmer. And hey, what's up, Jay, man? And so, but at the same time, I was always had ideas in my head, right? And I wanted to just like bring them out. So sometimes I would write little stories, and I would never share it to the world, but with the world, I would just um, write these stories. And it didn't occur to me to create comic books until like real late in life. Like I was when Kickstarter had started getting popular. I was one of the first people who just used to be on the platform, always supporting Kickstarters. And one of the sections they had was technology, and I was a tech head, so I'd always support these little gadgets. And then one day I saw that they had a comic book section, and I was like, oh, okay, what's this about? So I looked, and I realized it was like, oh, it was like people like me who were trying to create comic books, and they weren't really necessary with Marvel or DC. They were independent people, and they would possibly had a 9 to 5 job, but this is something that they did on the side. And so I funded one of my first comic books. Let me see if I have it here. Oh yeah, so um, I should say I pledged for one of my first comic books, and it was this one here. This is Shadow Eyes. So it was a great book. And the publisher of this Iron Circus, Spike, she had created a PDF, and the PDF was a step by step on how to do a Kickstarter, right? Just as successful as she was. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was one of those people that once you give me like a plan, it becomes more solid to me. Like it doesn't become this abstract idea of like, oh, creating comics. So like, how do I do it? What are the next steps? It was the PDF had like a step by step, showed you how to calculate, shipping and all the things to take into consideration. And so I was like blown away. She had created 2 PDFs, each of them about Kickstarter, one more specific than the other. But once I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm going to create my own comic. And so that's where it came from. Just like that. I know a lot of other creators take a different path. A lot of them actually start printing on their comics on their own, and going to cons first. A lot of them don't really even start with online. It's really it's in the real world. But the path I took was a little different, because once I decided I was going to create a comic book, I was like, okay, so what? I was doing research, and then I discovered the business model that made a little more sense to me was the idea of you start with a web comic, right? And you put it online, and you have a lot of people just coming to your website, and then once you build enough traction, then you could do something like a Kickstarter, where by then your fan base will be big enough because you've provided this content that people would see, and now they will actually want the physical product. So at first it sounds like it doesn't make any sense, right? Like, why would anybody buy anything that you have given to them for free, right? But um, it's been a proven model. So when I was doing like research, and I saw a lot of people started as web comics, and then they did a Kickstarter, and then they just it blew up because they had built that audience. And so that's why I decided to do myself, and it worked. you know, it worked. So that's how I got started doing comics.
That's awesome. Um, so like one of the things that you said when you were getting started was that like your parents weren't really weren't really taking the comics part seriously, or they were surprised that that's the path that you were taking. What was it that they that they envisioned for you? I'm always curious about that because I feel like parents like always have something that they think that their kids are gonna do, and
Well,
the
so
creative side like gets downplayed.
so so my so my parents are, like I said, old school Haitians. So they wanted the typical immigrant you know um professions for you, right? Like you doctor, lawyer, or engineer. My father wanted me to become an electrical engineer. So but I knew how my parents felt about comic books. So I never even really told them that, like, hey, I want to become like a comic book writer. And to be honest, I never really even thought it to myself. It was just like something that just wasn't really like an option. I was like, or didn't seem like a real option to me, because I didn't really understand what that meant. I knew I was already computer programming, so I knew what a computer programmer did. So that was more, that wasn't so abstract to me, so but I knew that even if I had approached my parents and was like, hey, I want to be a comic book writer, I knew that I was like, that would be like, I don't know, it'd just be like a waste of time. So so I never even told them like I was like, you know, into like being a comic book writer, or one even had that desire. Um, and then also at that time too, even like as I grew older, like I was in high school, I was more into just like writing, even not comic books, just writing in general and creative writing. And the problem was that I was really bad at grammar, and I'm still bad at grammar, but not as bad as when I was younger. But um, and I really didn't like my English class, and so I couldn't picture that something like the fact that I didn't really like the basics of what encapsulated being a writer, what I thought would be like, you would have to be a really good English student, so that I was like, well, I'm not really. I was like, I just like the creative writing story part, learning grammar rules, and that was so I was like, that kind of like the possibility of becoming a writer seemed like that wasn't really that might not be my thing, So that's where I was at with the whole idea about becoming a writer when I was younger.
And here you are now. You're a successful one. You have a very successful series on your own, and you have the upcoming collaboration with TJ and the other IP that you mentioned. And both you and TJ have been very successful on Kickstarters. I mean, I think you did 31, and I want to say TJ did 20 something. So I'm really excited to see Villainous and what you guys bring for that campaign. Can you tell us a little bit about like what you guys are thinking, when you're going to launch, and what kind of rewards that you guys are going to offer in this one?
Yeah, so um, last year TJ came to me and he was like, "Yo, do you want to work on something?" And I had known TJ for a while by then, like a couple of years. We've met each other at con, we've hung out, we've talked. So I knew him personally. So, and I knew like I knew him. Like it wasn't like I just knew him online and
Mm-hmm.
we only talked online and stuff. So there was a little bit of a relationship there already. So and I had a feel for the way the TJ worked because I've seen him at cons, and I saw like the his creativity and the business moves he was doing. And I was like, all right, he and I are on kind of on the same like wavelength. And so I was like, yeah, sure, let's do something. And it turned out to be the perfect synergy. He was um he both of us, we shared this common trait, but our personalities are a little different. He's I'm more of like my writing style is I like dark, deep, gritty stuff. TJ, he likes to make things a little bit more lighthearted. So when we combine that, that's how villainous is. There's it's gritty, but there's a lightheartedness to it. It's fun. It's got a lot of action, and we're trying to make a statement at the same time, some social commentary. So that writing style, that combined really worked. And he and I, when we collaborate, we both have a lot of respect for each other, and there's no egos. And so writing the story is pretty cool because villainous, like it feels like it's really a story from the both of us. I think when people read the story, they'll see a little bit of TJ in it, they'll see a little bit of myself in it. And so I think with that combination, I think it's going to be a great story. If you like sci-fi stories with a lot of action, you'll definitely love the story.
Mm-hmm.
And
Awesome.
the Kickstarter, I'm laughing because I'm always pushing the date back, and TJ's like, "Yo, when are we gonna do this?" um, Originally, it was supposed to be July, like late July, but it was just there was a lot of things going on personally. So we're aiming for late August, early September to launch the Kickstarter. So I've been doing a lot of posting on Instagram of the artwork of Villainous, and people seem to be really excited about that. We're working with some really great artists, some great colorists. Everything about it is gonna be it's gonna be off the hook.
Yeah.
You guys are gonna enjoy it. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited because, like I said, it's a sci-fi story. I'm a big sci-fi person. Growing up, I used to watch Star Trek. I remember my brothers and I, we were like 11, 12, watching Doctor Who. Um, it was so, and we used to watch the old Flash Gordon black and white
Mm-hmm.
one TV series, the one with the rocket ship going across the screen. You could see the rope, and I mean, anything that was sci-fi, we used to watch it. No matter how cheesy the effects was. Even British shows like besides Doctor Who, there was another one called Blake Seven. That was another show that we liked, my brothers and I. So so yeah, I'm excited about this sci-fi story. It's gonna be dope. Oh, and another question you had was the rewards, right? So we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
have what I want to do so so I guess this is where the collaborative effort comes in because I'm leaning more towards like I'm a big fan of like just books, like
Okay.
I just because just logistic wise and you know fulfillment wise, it's just easier just to focus on just the books. So like the last Kickstarter I had, I didn't have any prints. I didn't have any stickers, anything like that, because it's just easier just to ship books, focus on books. So um, that's what I'm gonna try to convince TJ to do, but TJ has other ideas. TJ is like the opposite. He's like t-shirts, buttons, yo, toys, uh, yo. sell cosplay costumes. No, he didn't say that, but he's like, so all right, we'll see what we'll do. So as far as rewards, we'll see how that goes.
Awesome. We have a question from the audience. JD wants to know, what is a Dream Furry comic?
Oh, so Dream Fury Comics is the publishing company I use, the publishing name I use to print my comic books. The funny thing is, I wasn't gonna call it Dream Fury Comics. I was gonna call it something else. I was gonna call it. I was trying to think of like some cool name. Like I was gonna call it Fat Ray Comics. I was gonna spell fat Phat. It's a good thing I didn't go with that. But the way Dream Fury came about is before I was doing comics, I was doing a lot of other stuff on the side. Like I was trying to do a lot of crazy business. Like at one time I was going to sell toys. Um, Gentle Nap Comics doesn't make. Yeah, that's the opposite of Dream Fury, right? Gentle Nap. Yeah, so so yeah, I was gonna sell toys on eBay. I actually applied for Diamond Distribution, as a reseller. I was buying products and trying to sell them on eBay. I had bought a bunch of toys on wholesale, and then I learned I wasn't really a good eBay seller, and so I wasted a lot of money doing that. But anything I was doing as a side hustle, I was like, I used Dream Fury as the company name, right? And so when I started comics, I was thinking, like I said, I was gonna try to think of some other cool name, but I'm not really good with names, so I was like, you know what, for now I'll just go with Dream Fury Comics, and then I'll change it later. But I never did. So Dream Fury Comics stayed, and that's the publishing company I used to print Crescent City Monsters, and then I'm gonna of course use that same publishing name for my other comic book series.
Okay, awesome. Well, of course, Moana said it a little bit earlier that you recently had a $31,000 campaign with Crescent City Monsters on Kickstarter. What are your one or two takeaways or lessons learned from that latest campaign? And is there anything you would have changed?
It's a good question. So one of the things I learned is always be prepared, because to be honest, I raised that much money because um, I sensed that I didn't sense, but it was kind of obvious that there was a big tide coming, right? Like at first when COVID came, people who were starting doing Kickstarter or comic book Kickstarter because that's the world I live in. I'm not sure about the other Kickstarters, but everyone was worried like, oh wow, people are losing jobs, things are starting to go financially bad for people, and then this COVID thing is just messing everybody up. Just everybody's not in the right state of mind, and at that time it was with Trump, and politically things were just getting bad, and there was just that somber mode, and people were like, people who initially was gonna do Kickstarters in March was like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. But then I remember Royer, uh he did, was it um it wasn't it wasn't
Yeah.
his series, it was
Yeah.
yeah, what was the name of the series?
Ianu.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna massacre the name, but yeah, that series, he was gonna launch, and I remember he had said he was gonna he changed his mind, he wasn't gonna launch, but then he changed his mind again and he launched, and he did big. Like I think he did what, like 38 or $40,000 or something like that. He crushed it, and then like I saw other Kickstarters, comic books Kickstarters happening, and they were all crushing it too. And that's when people started realizing like, oh, the opposite is happening. People are trying to escape from what's happening here, and they're willing. And comic book shops closed too, so comic book people needed their fix, and people were like, oh, what we thought would happen didn't happen. It's in fact the opposite happened. People are actually supporting more comic book Kickstarter campaigns. So that was like, that kind of threw everybody off, and it surprised me too, because I was like, by that time I was like, nah, I'm not gonna even do a Kickstarter this year. I'm just gonna chill, just work on my comic book and ride the year off. And then when I saw what was happening, I was like, yo, you know what? I need to do a Kickstarter. I wasn't planning on doing a Kickstarter, and I was like, and to do a Kickstarter is very mentally draining, and so you really have to mentally prepare yourself. Like, all right, I'm gonna start a Kickstarter. This is the mindset I need to get into. So when I decided, I was like, man, I was like, okay, I'm gonna launch the Kickstarter in like 3 to 4 weeks, and um, just to loop back to your question, because I'm taking the long way to answer it. One of the things is that the reason why, and you typically like to launch, when you launch a Kickstarter, you need a lot of lead time. You need to prepare people like, hey, it's launching, da, 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 prepare yourself. And this is the date, and just get people excited. But I was already on social media. I was constantly posting. I was posting enough where people were, the fans were still getting a taste of what's going on, what's to come. So like I was prepared for that. Like I didn't need as much as I did with
Uh-oh.
Looks like we have a little technical difficulty. JD says time's up. Not quite. We still have time.
He was just getting to the good part.
Exactly.
uh, bear
Well,
with us, guys. Hopefully, he'll come back shortly.
exactly. He said, please keep your answers to 10 minutes or less.
No, but I mean, what he was saying though is so true. Like Kickstarter is a mental battle. Um, it sucks more energy than you would think it would. It's really a mental game, and really the mental game is you against yourself. Lots of self doubt, lots of oh gosh, are we gonna make this? Like am I promoting too much? Are people tired of hearing me? And the reality is that social media filters so much. Like you really have to um, like be a broken record, because the algorithms are filtering you out like so much. So I would say also try to incorporate it into like, don't make all your posts about Kickstarter, but talk about it in like talk about your process, talk about like not so much selling and pitching, but just like your journey as you're
Okay.
doing it. There he is.
There he is. Uh-oh. We can't hear you.
Hey, can you guys
Can you hear us? Yes, we can hear you now. Can you hear us?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Newton, can you hear us?
At least I'm not the only one with technical difficulties.
I know.
We need to upgrade
Today
our
is
gear,
the
y'all.
day.
I can't wait. I need a new computer.
Oh, yeah, we can't hear you at all, Newton.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear us. If you
Can
can
you
hear us,
hear
give us a
us?
thumbs up. Okay, yeah, so he can hear us.
So he can hear us, but we just can't hear him. Okay. All right. Well, while he's trying to
Technology.
figure out the audio on that, and that way we can finish interviewing with Newton. For those, definitely be on the lookout. We will be
Can you guys hear
sharing
me?
the information. Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's
You were
okay.
just getting into the nitty gritty, and then we lost you.
Yeah, I like to, leave off on cliffhangers.
Yeah.
No, yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
So, yeah,
No
what was I
problem. You had
saying?
JD concerned. He was wanting you to blink 37 times to make sure you could hear them.
All right, one, two, three. No. Yeah. So there was yeah. So where was I? Yeah. So the my point to the whole thing. Let me make this short. Was that I was prepared for launching relatively quickly, right? Because I was like, hey, um, I saw an opportunity that there was this wave coming, and I was like, okay, let me ride this wave before it crashes. So um, I launched my Kickstarter just at the right time when so many people were um, just backing and pledging for Kickstarter. So that's one of the things that I took away from that Kickstarter. And then the second thing was the just the fans themselves. Now you always hear like, oh, I couldn't be here without you, thanks to the fan. But this it really touched me with the people who backed my Kickstarter, because when I launched the Kickstarter, one of the reasons was because I wasn't really one of the reasons I didn't want to launch a Kickstarter is because I wasn't really the book wasn't really finished, right? And so I launched anyway. Usually my books are about 98% done, right? They just need to be pretty much, uh, tweaked a little bit and then sent to the printer, right? But this time the book was only about, I think, like 70% done. And so I launched anyway, and that was the first time I've done that. And I was confident that we can actually finish the book. But then, like I mentioned earlier, the death of my mother happened, and then some other, family events happened, and that really rocked my world, and it slowed us down. Gian had some personal family issues too, and so it just kind of like threw me off, and what ended up happening is that my project was late. Like I was supposed to deliver at one, I think, January, but I was off by like 4 months. And during that time, I was really stressing out because I was always on time or early with my delivery dates for my last three Kickstarters. But this time I was late, and I was really stressed, and I was worried, and I felt like, man, I let people down. It felt like I let myself down, and I was worried that people would be like, "Yo, where's my book, man? Yo, where's my book?" But the fans were just quite the opposite. It was really heartwarming because I told them the truth. I was like, "Hey, I had some personal issues, and the book is going to be a little late because the things that I needed to do in the back end to take care of those personal issues, I wasn't really up to doing that. So the book is going to be late." And I thought people were going to be extremely upset and mad at me. They would be cursing me out. I thought they'd be calling me a no good bum. Um, but it was like I said, it was the opposite. People were just like so supportive. Um, it was just like it just blew me away. So yeah, I was touched by that. That was like really that was really deep for me because I was really at a low point. So to have people, back you and be so supportive of you, I didn't get any negative feedback, not one bad thing. And so, and that was about it was about 890 backers who, and not one of them complained. So, and that was, to me, that was one of the biggest takeaways. Like, doing this doing this and creating things, you make that connection with people, and you don't really realize how deep it is sometimes until, like, something happens, and then there's that connection. And so, that was the second big takeaway for me, at least with this campaign. It really, it opened my eyes. It showed me a lot, you know.
890 backers. Holy crap. I didn't realize there were
Yes.
so many. So did you do the fulfillment all by yourself, or did you contract the company to do it, or?
Yeah, so I was like, nah, nobody's taking my money, like percentage of. I was like, if I have to fill all orders, I'm gonna fill all orders. Like halfway through, I was like, yo, what the hell was I thinking? I was like, there's a lot of books to ship out. Um, but yeah, I fulfilled it myself. It took a long time. Yeah, it took a long time, but you know, um, I did it. There's still some lingering. There's about, I think, maybe like 25 uh, people left, but they haven't filled out their survey. The last. It's always there's always like a few people who, for one reason or another, don't fill out their survey, and then it takes them a while. They show up like 6 months later or a year later. Hey, where's my book? I had one person that was like, "Hey, can you hold my book? I didn't fill out the survey because I'm in jail right now." I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Once I get out, I'll fill out the survey and you can send me the book." I was like, "Okay, cool, yeah." I'll hold your books. Yeah, so interesting things like that. So yeah, but for the most part, it's I fulfilled it all. I had a little bit help from my daughters and my wife. At one point, they came in and helped me like package the books. But when it comes to stuff like that, usually I'm really laid back. I'm like, whatever. But with stuff like that, I'm like, no, look, you got to pack it this way, and look, you see this. So they got tired of that, and they stopped helping me. But yeah, I did have a little help though from the family.
That's awesome. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yep.
So given that you are collaborating with TJ, and you've done it successfully with Gian, um, what advice would you have for other creators who are looking to collaborate, and what are some red flags that should be alerting when you're searching?
That's a good question because you know the collaborative process is a tricky one because you have to understand like what your idiosyncrasies are because everybody has them, and you have to know like when you can trust the person that you're collaborating with, and when you know um, something that you need, uh, something that you want in the story needs to be done right, and it's kind of a balance in that because like there may be things that at one point where you're like, nah, that this we need to change, or we need to do this, and then you might have a disagreement, and then you're gonna have to work it out. So um, I think, and the important thing is that you have like a respect for each other, and that's the most important thing, in that you don't have some kind of ego. Like if you're gonna collaborate with someone, never ever ever collaborate with somebody if you're in the mindset that, oh, I'm better than this person. They're gonna, um, I'm gonna lead this and it's gonna go mostly my way. Never ever, like that's not gonna work out. Because unless that other person is that personality type where they're like, oh, I'll just kind of like follow his lead, which usually is not the case anyway. Most people aren't really like that. Even if they act like that, they're not really like that. you know, um, so like you never have that ego. You should never have that ego like, hey, or you should never work with somebody with the mentality like I'm the better of the group, so this is how it's gonna go down. You always have to think like the person that you're working with is your equal partner. Otherwise, it's not gonna work when you're collaborating with someone. And the biggest, I'm trying to think about the biggest the only the only obvious red flag I could think of is if you guys argue a lot. You know? I've worked with people who I've argued with a lot, and I'm like, nah, it's like we gotta, we can't continue like this. And believe it or not, some people, um, I don't know why, but they like relationships like that are not unusual for them. So like arguing a
Mm.
lot is like comfortable with them. Like, oh yeah, that's just the way people are. For me, that's not like how my relationships work. So if I'm arguing a lot
Yeah.
with you, it's like, nah, we gotta we gotta put this on pause.
Hmm. Exactly. JD also is asking the question, has Dream Fury or yourself uploaded your books onto com- Comicology
Oh
or
yeah, Comixology.
Crypto Comics?
Yeah, so I like Comixology. I have a huge digital collection. At this point, my digital collection out out is way bigger than my physical collection. But I've never really had the desire to put it on Comixology. And I actually buy books from Comixology and use the platform. And the reason being is that once it's on Comixology, you don't really have a direct connection to the people that you're selling. So I sell my books digitally on my own platform on dreamfurycomics.com. I sell both the physical books and the digital books and some T-shirts and prints and whatnot directly on my site because I like to just being able to connect with the audience. Like when somebody buys your book on Comixology, you don't know who they are, you know. But if somebody buys a book on my website, you have their name, you have their address and email, and if anything, you can always contact them. Like just recently, I switched t-shirt vendors, and um, somebody placed an order, and I just wanted to check to see, how the quality of the t-shirt is. So I was able to email the person and say, hey, what do you think about this t-shirt? Is it the quality that you expect? So things like that. Like I want to be able to reach out to the people who come to my website who buy things for me or from me, and I want to be able to interact with them. When you put it on other platforms, that's not necessarily the case. And some people, argue, well, Comixology has a bigger, broad um, fan base, and you can have better exposure. But when I use Comixology, I don't think I've actually uh, seen a lot of indie comics promoted. I've always seen like
Mhm.
Image Comics, Marvel, DC, but I don't see a lot of indie comics. Like if I ever, I would have to personally go and look for an indie comic in Comixology to look for that particular
Mhm.
comic book. So my point is like, why, if somebody has to search for me on Comixology, to me, it's not worth the effort. I'd rather, just sell the digital copy on my website. Plus, when you buy it on my website, it's a PDF and it doesn't have all those restrictions like you can. You can share it. You shouldn't, but you can share it. The PDFs. But yeah, so yeah, so I don't really sell on other um, digital platforms, and that's the reason why. That might change in the
Okay,
future, though.
gotcha. Well, as we're getting to the top of the hour, our next question is: as cons are starting to open back up, even with the unknown with the pandemic, especially over the last couple weeks, what is your plans on returning to the con scene, and are you prepared to be fully back in person, or are you going to wait certain cons out?
So when the COVID vaccination was announced, I was one of those people like, nah, I'm not taking the vaccination. I was like, they're gonna zombify me. I'm not trusting the government. I was like, yo, that's too fast. I was like, nah. I was like, let the guinea pigs go first. I was like, nah, I'm not taking the vaccination. But I changed my mind on that. I was like, all right, you know what? Let me take the vaccination because I didn't want to have any excuse. Like I knew it was going to come to the point that if you didn't take the vaccination, there were going to be certain situations or places that you couldn't go. I knew that was going to happen, right? And so I was like, let me take the vaccination because I did want to go to cons because I'm like, and I'm not really a big con person. I don't really do a lot of cons, but
Yeah.
this year I was like, man, I want to, go out there, do some cons. So, I got vaccinated and I did it. And then it turns out that BlurredCon had happened, right? And BlurredCon,
Hmm.
they required that you show proof of vaccination and you wear a mask
Yes.
when you get there. So I knew, there were going to be situations like that. So luckily I had been vaccinated and I went to BlurredCon. That was my first time at BlurredCon. I think this is their fourth. This is their fourth annual BlurredCon, and I had a good time. There was some controversy at BlurredCon, but it was all good. It was very unique. I've never experienced a con like that with so many black folks coming together, just being themselves, being so relaxed. Um, Outside of the controversy, I really think it's the people that made BlurredCon, and so
Yes.
that's why I'm coming back. I believe they can address whatever issues that they're having. All that can be fixed. I don't, to say that mm, I'm not going to BlurredCon because of this and that. I think that's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Or all those issues can be fixed. It's just a beautiful event to see so many black people, like I said, just chill, relaxed, open, and like really relaxed, just a really
Hmm.
safe place. So I love that aspect of it, and I look forward to going back. And there are two other cons I'm doing this year, New York Comic Con, and then I'm also doing Motor City Comic Con. So those are the two other cons I have for the rest of the year, and I'm looking forward to those. I heard New York has uh, um, a new policy now where I think they're saying that now you have to show proof of vaccination or something for
Hmm.
certain events.
For
So that's something
restaurants and
new.
any events. Hmm.
Yeah, so New York I got some email saying that now they're trying to figure out what that means for New York Comic Con. But in any case, I feel like I'm prepared. I'm vaccinated, so
Hmm.
I'm going. It's like it may not be a lot of people there, but believe it or not, that I've never tabled at New York Comic Con, so
Hmm.
this year, COVID or not, I'm going there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm definitely going to take the safety precautions, um, but I'm definitely going to be showing up at those two cons. So, yeah, um, I'm definitely doing cons.
Awesome. Uh, are you going to add some of the other cons that are starting to warm up on social media of the cons to go to, like DreamCon in Dallas, Texas, another Black convention, and then of course HBCU Con that's going to be in the spring in DC. That this will be their first year back in person. They've been virtual because of the pandemic, but
Oh, you
be
mean
in person.
you mean next year?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely next year. I'll probably try to do even more cons than I did this year. But for this year, like I said, New York Comic Con and Motor City Comic Con are the two only cons I'm gonna do. Um, New York City is my hometown, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely doing that.
Yeah.
And there's not that huge thing about the logistics of travel and bringing your books and stuff. So I'm doing that, and then Motor City. I'm to be honest, I'm doing cons where I think I can, make back the expenses of doing the con because I really can't afford to do cons
Mm-hmm.
where I'm losing money.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
because that's financially where I'm at right now. I can't do a con where I know I'm not gonna get my money back for the flight, the table, any other expense that I make. So that's my decision deciding factors and to whether or not I'm going to a con.
Gotcha.
Yep, that totally makes sense. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people, well, not a lot, but some people do forget to take those things into account. And
Yes.
I actually think indie creators should share more about like what we spend
Mm-hmm.
to go to conventions, because like I've heard people be like, oh, why does it cost this much to pay for this book or whatever, and I'm just like, well, really, you only seeing like the production costs. You don't even see all the other miscellaneous expenses that go along with
Mm-hmm.
tabling at these events and being an indie creator and just trying to keep your business sustainable so that you can keep creating the books.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and you're right because and sometimes that's why as an indie creator you may have to price your books a little bit more than what Marvel or DC because they have the advantage of um uh what do you call it
Economies of scale.
you're right, exactly, economies of scale, and we don't, we're not printing like 20,000 comic books and then for like
Mm-hmm.
30 cents. You know what I'm saying? And then they have ads on top of that, so I mean, and we could put ads in our comic books, but then then there's for me, the only thing about ads, like I don't really want ads in my comic book. And then the other thing is that you have to find the right person to put the ad right ad to. I wouldn't want to put any ad in my comic book. I
Yeah.
wouldn't want like some soap sponsor to be putting soap ads in my comic books. I would want it to make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then on top of that too, I use a lot of media mail to mail stuff off, and you can't have ads in your comic books if you're using media mail. Um, I mean, you could, but you can't. If you know what I mean. But yeah, so yeah, so it's like that's why indies have to sell their books for a little bit more, but a lot of the fans understand that,
Yeah.
and we're not talking about like like a lot more money, and I don't want to say that facetiously because I know some people, even like a dollar or two might stretch them, but for the most part, you know, um, the average person, an extra $2 isn't gonna really hurt them if they pay extra for the comic book. That's the way I feel about it.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. And the other thing too is that the big two, they make their money off the movies. The comics is not what they make their money off of, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I wonder if Marvel Comics how much money they actually make now. If they actually make enough to justify, I mean, just a comic book, if they make enough to justify their presence, or if they're just breaking even.
Yeah, that would be a good study, a good research project. Uh, but I don't think they make the numbers that they used to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I mean, they can afford to. They can afford to, like you kind of touched on, to lean back on the movies and be like, well, the movies are making some money, so maybe you could take a little loss, or maybe the profit's not that big. Like maybe typically a big company like Disney would be like, oh, these guys are, the return on investment is just pennies. We normally would, but because Marvel provides them so much IP, you know, it's worth it for them, to keep Marvel around. And I was thinking about it the day, is like, right, why doesn't a movie studio just keep the writers of comic books? Why don't they just hire them directly, right? Like, why create comic
Mm-hmm.
books and then base the movies off of them? And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, I think because there's like a synergy, right? Like, I don't think it would work if like a comic book creator just pitched their idea to a movie studio, and then the movie studio creates it, right? I think they need the comic industry as like a proving ground, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like they come up with an idea or story, and then they see how people react to it, how the comic book fans react to it, and then they're like, oh, you see this reaction, and it's, so I guess you could think of it like a test market, right? Because now they're producing all these stories in comic book format, which is way cheaper than movies, and introducing all these different characters, and now you can see what sticks, right? And you're like, oh wow, people love this character, maybe we should make it into a movie, so I
Yeah.
think maybe even if comic books aren't providing them the buco bucks, I think
Yeah.
is more of like a testing ground as to what works, and what um what the audience might, what the general audience might
Mm-hmm.
be into. What I mean?
Yeah.
Like we comic book nerds are the test beds of
Yes.
what's
Yes.
cool, right?
Definitely. Well, we're at the top of the hour. We thank you so much, Newton, for joining us tonight, sharing your story, getting personal, but also telling about your journey with Crescent City Monsters. But also, we're definitely looking forward to your upcoming projects, both your collaboration with TJ and then your other projects that you have coming down the pike. Uh, for those that, of course, we have it in the banner, but we also want you to share for those that are just learning about you today. How can they after the show to continue learning more about what's coming down the pike with Dream Fury Comics?
Yeah, just follow me here, Dream Fury Comics, right? Did I do that right? Yeah.
Yes.
On all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, especially Instagram. That's where I live. Um, I'm not really a big fan of Facebook.
Okay.
I try to stay off as much as possible, but they keep dragging me in.
Yes.
Like, people keep tagging me, so I'm like, oh, okay, go back on Facebook. But yeah, especially Instagram. All my social media handles are the same across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, which is Dream Fury Comics.
Awesome. But everyone definitely follow Dream Fury Comics so you can keep up to date, especially finding out when that Kickstarter officially launches so you can be one of the first to jump on that and get your official comic that as they're coming down the pike. And then also picking up some of the issues from Crescent City Monsters that if you want a copy of it, definitely go to the website and pick it up. Moana, do you have any closing words before we end it? Because we didn't have a lot of interaction in the comments. We had our usual two, so I'm not going to do the giveaway tonight. But do you have any final words before we're ready to close out for tonight?
I just want to say thanks, Newton, for coming on again. It's always good to catch up with you and see what what you got going on. Definitely let us know once you guys decide when to do the Kickstarter so we can have you guys both back on and help you promote and get the word out. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, we will be sitting and waiting with bated breath.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, and I appreciate you girls.
No, we got you.
Exactly. So yeah, definitely once you have your official launch date, we'll get you on for our Kickstarter highlight, so you can tell everybody about the Kickstarter, how they can pledge, what all the finalized collaboration that you did on the rewards and everything else, so they can find out all about that. So definitely let me and Moana know, and we can have you right back on here again.
All right. Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Definitely check us out next Thursday at 7 p.m. We will be having Sue Ann Hong. She is the president and of the Center for Asian Pacific American Women, or CAPAW. She's going to be on the show to tell you more about this nonprofit organization, the impact they're making on the community, and helping Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander women navigate through the corporate and professional world. And then right after her at 8:30 p.m., we will have Renee Cooper. If you remember, she was on our episode with us back in February. So we are very excited to have her come back, find out what all is new on her plate, and some new information and advice that she can give all of you on the show next week. So we thank you all for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Everybody, have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Peace, guys.
Aloha.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then, when they annexed Hawaii and called it cedar lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves a republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand. Yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No regard for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if you put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course, versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course, cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. Network out for all the locals, school will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf, if we won't tell it we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf, if we won't tell it we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf, if we won't tell it we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf, if